Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, and we're going to show some love to the rhythm section today. We've got one of the coolest guys around and super talented and just a very sweet, kind human being with Andy Hess. He's out of New York City. A couple of quick announcements. I want to say thank you very much to our mutual friend, Shawn Pelton, another rhythm section king from New York City, for connecting us. Shawn, thanks a lot. And also make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe to subscribe to the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the little emoji that looks like a bell. That helps us out a lot and gives Google incentive to recommend us. So thanks. All right. Andy Hess, born in Washington, D.C., grew up in many different places, including Indiana, Pennsylvania, Germany, and the San Francisco Bay Area. As a child and a young teenager, he split his time between Oakland and northern Germany. And music was always being played at home, and he became interested in playing bass, in part because his friends were already playing guitar and drums. He was a student at San Jose State University, and he started working with local blues and R&B bands, playing gigs 5 nights a week throughout the Bay Area. He's toured or played with John Scofield, Rosanne Cash, Joan Osborne, Leo Nocentelli from the Meters. So, guy's a great guitar player, man. The Black Crowes, Michael Landau, Robben Ford, Bill Sims Jr., Steve Kimock, who we had here on the show, as well as Robben Ford, Adam Levy, who we had on the show, Byrne, Worrell, Gov't Mule, where Andy made 5 albums with the band and toured all over the world, Jeff Golub, Henry Butler, Larry Carlton, David Byrne, Gavin Degraw, Michael Lee Firkins. I love that guy's playing.
Yeah, I did a record with him. Yeah, he got me to play on one of his records.
Great player, man.
Yeah, really great player, talented dude.
Tina Turner, Brittney Spears. I'm going to ask you about that one. Freedy, Freedy Johnston, Shawn, Colvin, and loads of other people. He also worked on soundtracks for American Gangster, which is a great movie, and Disney's Tangled. What a dichotomy, American Gangster and Disney's Tangled. And he lives in Brooklyn with his family, and he's also an avid photographer, man. So go to his Instagram. He's got a lot of cool pictures there. Dude, thank you. I'm so glad that we finally got to connect, man. You're such a cool guy, and we
be here. Thank you for inviting.
Man.
Thank you to Shawn Pelton for connecting us.
Totally, man. It's my pleasure.
Fine human being and wonderful drummer.
He is, man. The New York City, I always get comments on, what is it with you guys from?
Yeah, we have a good community up here. There's a lot of great players and a lot of wonderful people in town. And, you know, I mean, now's a tough time, as we all know, but New York's got a lot of wonderful players, and it's been a good place for me to be. You know, I've been here for 30 years now. Oh, wow. So do you consider yourself a New Yorker at this point? I mean, kind of. I would say that, you know, I've lived here 30 years, and it's the longest I've ever lived anywhere prior, you know, to. Yeah, this is the longest I've ever lived. And so I'm really starting to feel like a New Yorker. But, you know, I have my roots in Pennsylvania and California and Germany. Like, I moved around a lot. So, you know, but New York is definitely, I feel like I really grew up here.
Yeah, man. You have no choice.
Yeah, you know, I got here when I was 22 or 23. You know, that's very young. And I, you know, I just came here, and I can't believe I actually had the courage just to come here. And I had one friend here, and
what made you go there? Tell me the story, man. What made you go there?
I had been to New York a few times. My dad and I had taken a few trips to New York because my dad's originally from the East Coast, and he had friends in New York, and we would come up here. And you know, he took me to the Blue Note to see Dizzy Gillespie when I was like 15 or something, and then one summer I spent a summer in New York living in this loft with this buddy of mine. And so, like, I loved New York, and then this friend of mine who had gone to Berkeley School of Music and moved to New York was like, man, you got to come to New York City, you know. What are you going to do after college, man? Come out here, man, hang in New York, you know. And I was like, okay. You know, I was young, and I was like, yeah, New York City, you know. And there was all this great music that I loved that came out of here. And it was just, you know, there was something sort of, you know, exciting about New York, you know.
Yeah.
Every time I come to visit, it was like this incredible, there was all this mystery and excitement, you know, and hip hop came from here, and there was jazz, and there was, you know, all the session guys, and, you know, bands like Stuff, and, you know, you know, it was just like New York, you know,
Yeah.
oh, got to go check it out, you know?
Did you always live in Brooklyn?
Yeah. I've
Oh,
lived in
you
Brooklyn.
have? That's wild.
Yeah.
Dude, you know, I just realized
I've
this.
never lived in Manhattan. It's wild. I moved to Brooklyn and I've been here ever since.
Dude, check this out. I don't know if you could see this.
Oh yeah, Russ and Daughters.
I just realized that.
That's on the Lower East Side.
Yeah.
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 Wonderful. It's still there.
Yeah, I know. Can't
Yeah,
believe it.
that's an institution for sure.
Hey, so you mentioned you grew up all over. Was one of your parents in the service maybe, or?
Yeah, that's correct. My father was stationed in Germany in the 60s. He was in the army, and he had studied German and Russian in Monterey at the Monterey Army Language School. And so he was stationed in Germany. He was right on the East German border, listening. He was like a radio operator, kind of, I guess you could say.
Holy cow.
He would listen to the, you know, he didn't really tell me all that much about it, but, you know, I think he was there more for just to escape his, you know, he was young and didn't really know what he was going to do yet. And I think, you know, joining the army was like a way to see the world and get out, and, you know, but in a way, like, he was lucky. He was stationed in Germany and he got to, you know, and that's where he met my mother.
In Germany, that's
lived
wild.
in this little town where he was stationed.
Oh, your mom's from Germany.
She's from there, yeah. So she was living in this town, and she would go hang out. You know, it's like young people getting together in bars and nightclubs or whatever. And then the GIs, you know, the Americans would come to the bar. And so my mom started hanging out with my dad, and they, you know, fell in love.
That's wild.
They got together, and then they ended up getting married and moved to the States, and they were living in outside of Washington, D.C., just right on the border over in Maryland, because my dad was going to the University of Maryland.
Okay.
And they had me, and then, you know, we moved to Indiana because my dad was going to Indiana University. And
that's a good music school. He wasn't going for music though.
No, he wasn't going for music. He was kind of an intellectual, like he was studying comparative literature.
Holy shit.
And he got his master's and his doctorate from Indiana University.
That's cool.
And so we lived in Indiana, but then my parents split up, and eventually my mom got homesick for Germany, and I had to move with her. So then that's how I ended up moving over there. And my dad headed west. They split up and went in opposite directions. You know?
Oh. To the extent
you're pretty young, I was like 5.5 or something. So like we were living in Bloomington, and my parents split. My dad moved to Berkeley, California, and started teaching at San Francisco State and Sonoma State up in Cotati. And so he became like a Bay Area guy, you know, that's where he stayed the rest of his life. And my mom and I moved back to Germany. My mom got remarried. So I grew up there, and I spent all my summers in the Bay Area. Like last day of school, my mom would take me to the airport, and I'd fly by myself from Frankfurt to San Francisco. My dad would pick me up, and I'd spend the whole summer with my dad in Oakland,
right,
Berkeley, and then at the end of the summer, I'd fly back and live with my mom and my stepfather.
Man,
so it was kind of crazy, you know. I was young, I was already like on the road, you know. Like I was already traveling a lot, you know.
Let me ask you, to the extent you're comfortable like sharing, how did that, because that was at a time where divorce was just starting to sort of like creep, you know, it had, people were aware of divorce.
Yeah, it was like 71, I think they split up or something like that.
Yeah, so it's not like now we're like, oh, you haven't been divorced? What's wrong with you? It was like, you know, people were just starting to get divorced, and it was like, right. You know, how did
really
that
happening a lot then, I think, in the 70s, you know.
Yeah, but it wasn't as out, like, I don't think.
Yeah, it was still like, it was still kind of like a big, oh my goodness, you know.
Right. It was like, did you hear Bill and Marge got divorced?
Right. And I think my grandfather even tried to talk my dad out of it or something. You know, it was like, I heard that later, you know, being told in family history, you know.
How did that, again, to just the extent you're comfortable, Andy, how did that impact you? Not necessarily the divorce, but just that's a lot of stress for a fucking 5 or 6 or 7 year old, you know?
Yeah, I think it impacted me greatly. I mean, I think it had some, I think it was hard, you know, it's difficult because suddenly my dad wasn't around, you know?
Right.
I didn't see him as much, you know, and so I spent all my summers with him. And
Right.
so it was difficult. You know, it was definitely, there was some trauma there for that,
Yeah.
you know, like the whole separation. Because when you're 5.5, you know, I mean, now that I'm a father and have a son, like, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
you know, being away from my kid 9 months out of the year, you know, and being 6,000 miles away, like on the other side of the world.
I'm divorced, and my
like that was difficult for me, you know, for sure. It was definitely, you know, I mean, you know, yeah, I'm a child of divorce and like all the things that come with it, you know.
Yeah.
Just good things came out of it too, you know. It was just how it was, you know. It was out of my control, but yeah, it definitely, I think it impacted me for sure. Like I didn't want to move to Germany when my mom said that we were going to move over there, you know. We were living in Pennsylvania at the time. And I was going, you know, 1st through 3rd grade, and then suddenly it was like, oh, we're going to move to Germany, you know. And I had been to Germany a bunch of times. It wasn't unfamiliar to me.
Okay.
And I could speak the language a little bit, and, you know, and we had gone over there to visit and stuff like that. So it wasn't like a total shock, like, oh, I don't know this country. But was I ready to move there when I was 9 years old? No. You know, I was like, what, you know, another big event, you know, like,
yeah,
but,
it's not.
you know, I mean, a lot of kids go through that, you know, like divorce, and then you move, and then, you know, I was always the new kid in school, and, you know, it was a lot of back and forth. Like we moved over there actually, and then my mom wasn't happy there, and we moved back to Pennsylvania again, and then back again finally. Yeah, because my mom was just not, you know, she wasn't really sure about where she wanted to be, because she really fell in love with the States, with the United States, and had friends here. Loved my dad's parents very much, who I was very close with, and she was close with even after they split up. But anyway,
wow.
Not to get too deep into it, but yeah, it was definitely impactful.
Yeah, I could see that, man.
Yeah, it was definitely it made you know, it had an impact, and it definitely shaped, you know, my life, because I was back and forth a lot, and, you know, and then at some point I wasn't sure, like when I moved back to the States when I was 17, and you know, and at that point I had made some really great friends over there in Germany too, you know, and I had started playing music over there, you know, like I got my stepfather bought me my first bass, you know.
That's
and
cool.
He was really into music, so he always had the hippest records, you know. He was a jazz nut, but he also loved soul and R&B, and, you know, he turned me on to so much music. And my dad was really into music too, so like in the summers I would discover all these records, because he lived in you know, he was typical Berkeley, California 70s. He lived in a big communal living house in Berkeley with other intellectuals and teachers, and, you know, and like, so I'm in this house with all these record collections, and like that blew my mind, because I would spend the summer over there, and, you know, then I was a teenager, and I started getting into smoking pot and discovering Bob Dylan and B.B. King records, and, like, you know, they had all these hip records that I started discovering, you know.
So
there was music, you know, I had a lot of music between my stepfather and my father. There was a lot of records to be discovered, you know. And
now, I read the story that your dad lived around the corner from a blues club.
yes.
Talk about that, because I know that impacted
That was
you.
probably the most, I think even to this day, the most sort of profound, or during, you know, growing up and being a teenager, that was like incredible, because my dad let me go. He went over to I met this guitar player who was living across the street from my dad in Oakland. His name was Carl Goodrock and Robinson. He was a lefty. He would sit out on his stoop and play. And I had just started playing, and I had really started falling in love with blues records. You know, like I was really into, like, the first 2 blues records I remember so clearly was B.B. King Live at Cook County Jail.
I like that one so much better than Live at the Regal, by the way.
Right, which is a lot earlier, but Live at Cook County I discovered at my dad's house in Berkeley, and it kind of just blew me away. Like I didn't even really know what it was. Like I had been into Hendrix and Cream, but then suddenly I was like, you know, my dad was like, oh, you should listen to, you know, where those guys got their stuff. And my dad was hip, you know, he knew about that stuff, you know, culturally. And he said, you should listen to, you know, and then here I was in his living room discovering like B.B. King Live at the Regal and John Lee Hooker Never Get Out of These Blues Alive. Those were the first 2 like real impactful blues records that I heard. And but yeah, then one day my dad had moved from Berkeley to Oakland, and he lived around the corner from this blues club, and Carl was across the street on the stoop.
Carl Good Rockin'.
Carl Good Rockin' Robinson.
That's so funny.
And I could see him from across the window. You know, I'd look out and I go, "Hey, Dad, you know, that guy's out there playing guitar. He's like out there on the stoop." My dad was like, "Go introduce yourself. You know, go over there and say hello. And you live across the street, and that you're into music too, man. Just go, you know, say hello." You know, I was like, "Okay." You know, because I was feeling shy about it, you know, but I was always curious, and I'd always watch him from the window. You know, I was like 14, 15. You know, I'm a kid.
Your dad sounds like such a cool guy.
I walked across the street, you know, and I introduced myself, and he's like, "Hey, man, yeah," you know, and I said, "Hey, you know, I play too," you know. I was just like, "Cool," you know. He's this guy. He was so cool, you know, and he was a lefty too, so he had like the Hendrix look, you know. He was playing, you know, and we just started talking, you know, and he's like, "Man, you should come down to the jam sometime, you know, down at Kesey's Lounge," which that was the club that was around the corner.
Okay.
It's called Your Place, Kesey's Lounge. Louis Kesey was the owner of the club.
Okay.
He always wore this big hat with like feathers in it. And it was like, you know, it was sort of, you know, it was predominantly black blues club, but like there were white, you know, people coming too. So it was like a mixed crowd. And Carl was like, "Man, you should come down to the Sunday jams. You know, I don't know if you can get in at night because you're a little young, you know. You come down on Sundays, they have the barbecue jams in the back, you know, outside in the backyard, you know." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, that's cool," you know. And I remember going to my dad really excited, like, "Oh, I'm going to go to the jam session," you know. He's like, "Great," you know. So I went down there one Sunday, you know, and I said, "Hey, Carl, remember I'm Andy from across the street?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, man." You know, and I would just watch these guys play, you know, and eventually I sat in like on a tune or two, you know, because I was just starting. Like I couldn't play that well, you know. I was just learning about shuffles and blues and, you know, playing some Jimi Hendrix, Hey Joe, you know.
Were you learning, like, did you have a teacher?
I was like a beginner, you know.
Did you have a teacher, or you just
I had a teacher in Germany that taught me some stuff, who was like a total Jocko freak, you know, and who had like crazy chops, and he studied all this Jocko stuff, and he played fretless. And so he was my teacher, you know, but it was like kind of like, whoa, like too much. Like I was, you know, blown away by it, but it was like a little too much for me at that time. But then later, of course, I loved Jocko and Weather Report and all that stuff. I got into listening to that, but like I really started out with, you know, rock and roll and blues. You know, that was sort of the stuff that I was really into early on, like, you know, Hendrix and Cream and Jack Bruce and Noel Redding. You know, I'd look at all the albums and the photos, and, you know, I wanted a Fender jazz bass because Noel Redding had a Fender jazz bass, you know, the bass player for the Experience.
Sure. So
it all kind of came together, and that was really profound, because suddenly I'm in this blues club hearing these local guys who were like dealing, you know. It was like what I heard on the record happening in front of my face. Okay. And I'm meeting these people and like starting to talk to them, and they're like curious about, "Hey man, where," and I was like, "Oh, I'm up on 65th Street. My dad lives here. I spend the summers here, you know. And I play bass," and they're like, "Oh, cool." And so I started meeting all these local guys. But then I also met like Lowell Fulson, because he played at the club. You know, and he's a legend. Yeah. One of the greats. And I went to see John Lee Hooker play, you know, for $7. It cost $7 to go see John Lee Hooker.
What was that like?
And so like I got to see all these guys, and like suddenly it was like, oh, this is it. You know, like it was a really big like boom moment for me, you know. Musically,
what was that?
Hear and see these guys, you know, and be around them and listening to them talk, and it was incredible. And then I would hang out at night at the club. Like my dad went and talked to Louis, the owner, and I was a tall, lanky kid, so like, and they had like a little kitchen there, like they served burgers or something. So they were like, "Well, it's kind of a restaurant." Loose. It was like the early '80s or whatever. They're like, "It's cool. Andy can come in," you know. So I'd spend every night down there just hanging out and listening to every band, just soaking in it. I had my little tape recorder, you know, and I'd record the gigs on my little cassette. Yeah. See it, you know.
And did you start playing there at all, or?
No, later I did. Like when I moved to California for good and went to San Jose State, I started driving up there and playing with some of those guys
Okay.
that I had met. Like I started playing with Carl a little bit. And there was a great blues club in Oakland called Eli's Mile High Club, which was pretty well known in West Oakland. And there were a lot of great gigs going on there, you know, local guys and, you know, regional blues artists. It was a vibrant blues scene in the Bay Area at that time. And so then I started playing gigs with these guys, you know, like suddenly I was doing these gigs and I was 19, you know.
At the local blues club, or are you traveling around Oakland?
No, just the Bay Area.
Okay.
You know, just locally, yeah. Like I'd drive up to Oakland, or I'd have a gig in Berkeley, or, you know. And then I started playing in bands down in San Jose, where I was going to college.
And how did you get into the music business, like post clubs, like the next level, and like?
Well, that didn't really happen until New York City, you know.
So tell me, take me through the story. How did that happen? You go to the city, and then like, how did you get work once you got to the city?
When I got to New York City, I didn't have any work. I got a job. I just had a regular job.
What were you doing?
Man, I had this really bizarre job. I because I'm fluent in German, like I'm totally bilingual because of the way I came up, hearing the different languages.
Yeah.
I called this German tourism office in Midtown.
Oh my God, how smart is that?
Because I was like, well, maybe I can use my dual language thing to get like a decent job, paying.
Yeah.
Job. And so I went in for this interview, and they hired me like right there to do like office work and answer phones, but you needed to have both languages. So suddenly I'm working in Midtown, you know, just doing a stupid day job that I didn't like. I didn't care for it, you know, but I had to get my feet on the ground, you know.
Yeah. You're probably making better money than.
You know, like I moved to New York. I took the train from Oakland to New York with a bass and a suitcase.
Oh my God. I didn't even know they have such a thing.
And a piano player friend of mine from college, we decided like, we're going to move to New York, but we're going to take the train. It's like, what were you thinking, you know?
Holy crap. I didn't know they had a train.
I took Amtrak from Oakland to New York.
That is wild. So you get off like, what is Amtrak? Grand Central?
Yeah, Penn Station.
Penn Station's.
It was the dead of winter. It was like snowing.
Which is the cesspool.
You know, and I'm like with the quarter, I call my friend in Brooklyn. I'm like, okay, what subway do I take to get to where I'm going to live, you know?
Oh my God. And yeah.
1990. I moved to New York in 1990.
And Penn Station was a cesspool then. I mean, it's still not great, but it was.
Yeah, it was pretty funky. You know, it was snowing outside and it was brutally cold. And I'm like, what have I done? You know, left California, you know, here I am in the dead of winter going out to Brooklyn on the R train, you know, like with my bass and my suitcase.
So you had a guy there that was going to be a roommate. Let you live with him?
Yeah, okay. He said, I got a room for you. I got an apartment here that there's a saxophone player lives here, but he needs a roommate and you could be his roommate.
Okay.
So then I got this job and then I just started going to jam sessions. You know, I started going to the Village and of course, naturally I sought out blues clubs because like that was familiar to me, you know, playing blues and kind of R&B-ish type stuff and rock. And so I was like going to all the blues jam sessions that were happening in New York at the time. And that's how I started meeting players, you know. It was like down on Bleecker Street.
Terra Blues or something like that?
All those places, you know. There were all these clubs, Manny's Car Wash, and there was a whole scene. And that's where I met, you know, a lot of other bass players too that you know probably, and just all of these musicians, you know, this whole pool of people. You know, later Sean Pelton, you know, I met him later on.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how you guys knew each other.
All these, you know, there was just a whole scene of musicians, and so like I started going to jams, and then you know things started suddenly. Then I started playing with this dear friend of mine, Bill Sims Jr., who was really great blues singer, guitar player, you know, and he took me into his band. I was subbing for his bass player, and then his bass player, really amazing bass player, this guy Steve Logan, who played with Hiram Bullock and Dave Sanborn. He got so busy that like then I started playing Bill's gig, and Bill had a lot of gigs, and So I just started playing these blues gigs, you know, blues and R&B stuff. And then I fell in with all these other bands, and suddenly I was working, you know, 5-6 nights a week in New York, because at that time in the early 90s, you could do that. You know, there were so many clubs, and, you know, we're doing like blues and R&B cover, you know, band stuff, you know, so you learned a lot of tunes and you played with a lot of different people, and you started, you know, meeting this whole, you know, group of musicians, and it's, you know, and then word of mouth, and then, oh, you know, subbing for this guy, and, you know, and it took a while. I did wedding gigs. I mean, I did every gig. You know, there was no, it was all yes, I can do that. Yeah, I'll take that gig. You know, I was young, I was hungry, I wanted to just, you know, I tried the wedding gig thing for a while, but I hated it, you know.
Well, from what I understand, most people hate those gigs, but some of the bands are really good. But
really good. I was in a really crappy one that I didn't really like that much. So like I tried that out, and suddenly I was making more money, but I was missing.
Right.
Like I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to Bleecker Street and play in the clubs.
Yeah.
I'm going to somehow, I trusted my instinct that I was going to get further somehow doing that, you know, staying true to like what I wanted to play.
Yeah,
and
sure.
people wanted to be around, like the club date thing, you know, like I had to put on my tuxedo and go out to like, you know, deep Brooklyn or New Jersey and play some club date, and it was just miserable. Like it just wasn't for me, and I'm not putting it down, because amazing musicians that have done it and still do it,
and great pay,
legit, great paying, and some of the bands are amazing. They can play anything and they're super tight, and it's all cool. It just wasn't for me, you know.
Yeah, totally.
I just didn't land in a place where I was like, oh, this is something that I want to do, you know.
Yeah, I get it. So what was the first gig you got that was like, you know, moved you up, you know?
The first gig I got that was like where I got a taste of like, man, maybe I can really like, because, you know, I was playing these club gigs, you know, it was like 3 sets a night.
Oh, wow. You're playing 5-6 nights a week. Holy shit.
6 nights a week, and smoke-filled clubs playing like covers, and
you're working the next day. You got to go talk.
It's great because you're meeting all these like-minded or people that were into the same music. So we had some really great bands that were playing all the time, but there was a ceiling. It was like, well, where's this going to go, you know? And then you started playing, and I started playing in some original bands, and we played at the bitter end, and it was still the time of like showcasing, and maybe would be interested, you know, in our band, you know. So I had a couple of those projects too, where we, you know, present our original stuff. And
are they closed down? Because I've been seeing some. Yeah, they were looking for money because they're having a hard time.
They've been in trouble, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of clubs are in trouble due to this pandemic. You know?
Yeah.
A lot of clubs are struggling, and it's really difficult for clubs to survive. But yeah, then the first thing that I got that was with Leo Nocentelli, the guitar player from the Meters.
How did you get that, man? He's such a great player.
A friend who I knew recommended me, and somehow he had done he was like a promoter. He promoted shows and stuff, and Leo was looking for a bass player to just come up. He was coming up from New Orleans to play, or I don't know if he was living in LA at the time or still in New Orleans, but he was coming out, and he brought with him Russell Batiste, who was an amazing drummer from New Orleans, who at that time was a really young, just coming drummer. And then he got Bernie Worrell from Parliament to play organ and keyboards. And
what a band.
And I was so nervous, you know. I mean, I was super excited, and I loved the Meters. I had fallen in love with those records. And suddenly I was like, man, I'm going to play with Leo Nocentelli, you know. And it was really exciting. And like we rehearsed, and we played at the Lone Star Roadhouse, which was kind of a big club still.
Yeah, I remember that place.
And
it was like 13th Street or something like that.
Yeah, and that was my first like, oh man, I'm playing with a kind of a well-known.
Yeah, very well-known.
Legend. You know, I mean, he's one of the greats, you know, and he wrote all that music for the Meters, or, you know, with those guys. They're, you know, had such an impact, you know, that band. And so here I was playing with Leo Nocentelli, and it was very exciting, you know.
Leo Nocentelli, Russell Batiste, and Bernie Worrell. That's a
Yeah, that was like my first sort of bigger gig, you know.
yeah, that's
Like
great,
playing with
man.
guys that were already like, you know, legends. You know, Bernie with Parliament, and Russell was like, you know, everyone was like Russell Batiste, you know. And he was the drummer in the Funky Meters
The
at the
Funky
time.
Meters,
You know,
yeah.
'cause there were all these offshoot bands, like, you know, one I think was Without Art, and then, you know, there were all these different lineups of the Meters, you know.
So that was just like for a few weeks, or how long did that
No,
run?
that was just like 2 shows maybe, you know, but then it went well. Like I really shedded my butt off and I had the stuff down pretty, you know, I really worked hard on it. And Leo was happy with it, you know, and then he called me later and was like, hey man, you know, can you put together a band for me, you know, like with some of your cats that you like to play with. You know?
Right.
So I don't have to bring anyone, you know.
Right.
Come up there and you guys have it and we'll do some gigs, you know. Like, so he would come in, fly into New York, and I had put together a keyboard player and a drummer, 2 really good friends of mine that I was playing a lot with locally, who were really great, and who both still play and are amazing musicians. But so I put together something for him, and then we would go drive up to Boston and do a little East Coast run, you know, and play in New York and play in Boston at the House of Blues. And so that was sort of my first, you know, that was my, playing with Leo. It was an incredible experience to get to play with him.
Yeah.
You know, I learned a lot. Just his, you know, his rhythm thing on the guitar is so powerful, you know, and playing those Meters tunes was really exciting, you know, playing with the guy who was part of writing.
Yeah. He's legend.
Yeah. So it was a thrill, man. It was like, and that kind of gave me hope, like, oh man, maybe this can, you know, because I didn't know. I mean, I was still young. I was like, you know, I was just taking it a day at a time, you know, like I didn't have any plans, or I was just this bass player in New York and wanting to play, you know.
I want to,
and, you know, getting those gigs in those clubs down, like I had felt like I made it, you know. I'm in New York and I'm playing 5 nights a week in clubs. Like I felt successful, you know. It was like, but then getting the gig with Leo was like, oh man, this is another level up, you know.
Right.
That was around 1992. Yeah, I'd been in New York about 2 years, or 93, I would say, maybe.
I'm going to mention some artists that you've played with. If you could talk about how you got the gig, and maybe an interesting or funny story about working with them, and then you know, anything that you took away from that experience. Joan Osborne.
Joan Osborne. That gig I got through my friend Jack Petroselli, who plays in the band The Fab Four with Will Lee and those guys.
with Jimmy
and Will and those guys. Jack Petroselli, he's in that group. Jack had been playing with Joan, I think, man, since the early 90s, and Jack and I were playing together in a bar band. And Joan had that huge record, Worrell-ish.
Yeah.
It had If God Was One of Us.
God Was One, yeah.
And so Jack had been out on the road a lot. And then Joan did her second record, and she had asked Jack to put together a band for her next tour. This was in like 2000. And so Jack just recommended me, and I didn't even have to audition. It was like she just trusted Jack. So Jack put together the band, and that's how I got the gig.
That's great.
Yeah, and we rehearsed and we did a lot of touring, and, you know, did Austin City Limits, taped that, and so that was really great because Joan's a wonderful singer, great singer.
Just sing a great song,
incredible voice, you know, and the band was really fun, and it was a wonderful tour. We had a really good time. Yeah, I mean, every gig, you know, like when you ask that, it's interesting because I can point at one single person. Every gig I've ever gotten, it's like because of this person, you know.
What any funny stories or interesting stories about working with Joan?
Not that I can. No, nothing. I mean, you know, we just had a great time. We toured, and the band was great, and then it ended.
All right. So here's another one, the Black Crowes. I'm laughing just because I had Steve Gorman on the show recently, as you know. So.
The Black Crowes, that came immediately after the Joan gig.
Oh, okay.
Joan gig finished, and yeah, then I went on to play with them. Like I went and it's a funny story actually. It's a little more complicated. I mean, I don't know if how deep I should go into it, but basically what happened was I had gotten the gig with Joan, but then I got an audition for the Black Crowes.
After you got the gig with Joan.
Yeah, the Joan gig was like falling into place. And then suddenly I was like asked to audition for the Crowes. And it was like, oh my God, what's happening? And so I went and did the audition for the Crowes. And I didn't get the gig. So it was like, okay, cool, fine, it's all right. I'm going to start touring with Joan Osborne. So
right.
It's all working out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, that's a pretty good fallback.
But then what happened was Steve Gorman at the time was living in Brooklyn, really close to me. And so I didn't get the gig, and then they were going to go out there. They were going out with Jimmy Page.
Right.
And that was like, oh man, I could have played with Jimmy Page maybe, but whatever. I didn't get the gig, but then Jimmy canceled because he had back problems.
Right.
And a bunch of other things that went down. I don't really know. But anyway, like they canceled everything. And what happened was Steve called me because they had done a bunch of gigs and they weren't happy with the bass player, I guess, that they had. So Steve called me and said, hey man, are you available? Like, I think, I remember he called me up and was like, I think we should have gone with you. And can you come and do this? And I was like, man, I just took this gig with Joan Osborne. And I stuck to my guns, even though it was hard for me. I was like, man, I'd already accepted this gig with Joan. I can't cancel on her. It's not right.
Right.
And he's like, okay, yeah, I understand, blah, blah, blah. And it was hard for me to say that, it was like, here's like the Black,
Yeah, there was the
Steve's
biggest band in the world, yeah.
Asking me if I want to do this. And then literally I start the Joan Osborne tour, and then I hear later, 6 gigs in, everything's canceled with Jimmy Page and the Crowes. And so think of if I had canceled on Joan.
Oh
so
my God.
It's a really valuable lesson in sometimes or not sometimes, but you got to stick with your word,
Yeah.
And so I stayed with, I didn't call Joan, go, hey, sorry, I got this other,
Yeah.
And also I was excited to play with Joan because my friend Jack was there and it was fun, and, the band's really good. And I was like, man, I'm not going to just bail on this,
Who's playing guitar on that?
What's that?
On the Joan tour?
Jack Petroselli.
Oh, Jack was a guitar player. Okay.
Andrew Carrillo.
Okay.
Another great guitar player here in New York. Because Jack would switch between guitar and keyboards.
Okay.
Berlin and stuff. Because Jack's very incredibly versatile and plays a lot of instruments. So he would switch between various instruments, but Andrew always played guitar.
Okay.
Thing that if Jack would switch to something else, Andrew always had the guitar thing. And then there was a drummer, Billy Ward, and me, myself, and Joan. Yeah. So, but it's just a really good lesson, and you got to stick to your word. You can't just bail on someone.
Yeah, in this case, it worked
because
out.
Then their whole thing got canceled. So had I bailed on her, I would have paid for it.
Oh, yeah.
But then later it worked out, because then after the Joan tour came to an end, Steve called me again, said, hey, we're working on this new record, the record Lions.
Right.
How's your schedule looking now? And I had just finished the Joan thing, and I didn't know if there was going to be anything more, what she was going to do. So then I had this opening to accept the gig, and I took the gig with the Crowes. And that was late 2000, early 2001. They were working on Lions with Don Was. And I'm not on the record. I did go down and record a little bit, but they ended up not using any of my stuff. It was all a little bit chaotic, but then I did the gig, and then I did it all through 2001.
So you did the Lions tour.
I did the Lions tour and we did a whole world tour, and it was incredible. You know, it was a great experience for me because I'd never done anything quite on that level. You know, that was like a whole another level that I had never experienced. It was very exciting, you know, and I met Audley, and he's to this day a very close friend.
You guys are buddies.
So,
Yeah.
so a good friendship came out of it, you know, and it was a great experience. You know, we toured with Oasis, we toured with Neil Young and Crazy Horse, we opened for AC/DC. You know, it was like, oh my God, you know, watching AC/DC side stage or watching Neil Young every night side stage after finishing a set in front of all, you know, 20,000 people in Europe, and then watching Neil Young, you know, it was exciting for me. It was like, oh my God, you know, like, I can't believe this is happening, you know. And the band it was great. You know, we had some amazing gigs, and Chris sang his ass off. I mean, you know, the brothers fought a lot. Sometimes it was difficult to be around that energy, you know,
sure,
because they weren't getting along, and there was just a lot of tension, you know, and sometimes it would weigh on everyone, you know. But when the band was hitting and everyone was in the zone, like the tour with Oasis was super fun. It was called the Tour of Brotherly Love.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. Were you in there was something that Steve wrote, if I remember, in his book, where there was Steve or somebody wanted to beat the shit out of one of the Gallagher brothers or something like that. Was that Oasis?
I don't know the exact. I think that was something that maybe had happened earlier, and you know, before I was in the band. But then, you know, we did this tour with them, and
everything was cool.
Exactly how the story. I'd have to go back and listen to the.
Yeah,
to the I don't know the exact details of that.
Yeah, I think it was something with Oasis.
But that was an exciting tour, you know, and it was really fun. Everyone was actually having a really good time on that tour.
That's cool, man.
And to hear Oasis every night and hang with those guys, I mean, it was just nuts, you know. It was like, you know, 6 buses and trucks, and you know, we were doing sheds all across America. And there was other band called Space Hog played before.
Oh yeah, I know them. Yeah,
they were brothers too. So it was like Space Hog, Oasis, and
the
Tour of Brotherly Love.
What was their big hit? Let's Go. I could hear it, but I know the song. Yeah, Space Hog. They were hot for a minute.
Yeah. So, you know, that was exciting. You know, it was exciting. But then it ended. You know, and the fights got pretty bad. You know, Chris and Rich were fighting a lot. And,
sure.
You know, and listen, I didn't feel like a band member, honestly. Like, I was hired, and then it ended. You know, like I did a whole year. I was in the band. You know. And Eddie Harsh was still there, amazing keyboard player that was in their band, but it was a great experience for me. You know, for me it was really fun. Overall, it was a great experience. You know, with various ups and downs.
Brittney Spears, what'd you do with Brittney Spears?
I mean, that was just a fluke. I knew this producer that was working on her first record. And this was before anyone knew her. I played on one song on her first record because I was trying to do some studio work too,
sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Trying to connect and hopefully get hired for studio work. So, you know, and I never became like a big time session guy, but I started getting some sessions and, you know, connecting with producers. And so this guy, Eric Foster White, who produced half that record and co-wrote a lot of the songs, this keyboard player friend of mine, you know, just recommended me, and Eric liked my playing. He'd heard me somewhere at a club with some original band. I was like, hey man, I'm producing this young girl pop singer, you know, Brittney Spears, and you know, I need some bass on this one ballad. Could you come in and play? I was like, okay.
Oh, so it's just a one-off session.
This wasn't like she was a no one at that point. No one knew about her. This was her debut record, you know.
That's wild.
So I ended up on this record. I have a credit on this record. And to this day, I sometimes still get like a residual check because it was so huge. You know, that Baby Hit Me One More Time. Like, I didn't play on that, but I played on like the 3rd single or something. And, you know, if you put it on, it's not like, oh, the bass playing is incredible. You know, it's just me like playing on this ballad, you know. And,
that's cool.
Know, it's just very radio. It's not like it's like, oh, check out the bass, you know. It's not something that I go around going, hey, I played on the Brittney Spears record, you know.
On the first Brittney Spears album.
You know. But yeah, it's kind of funny, you know. It's a
good story.
I mean, it's just a good story, and it's you know, she's kind of a pop icon of the 90s or 2000s or whatever. But
now here's a guy I want to ask you about.
that was just like a fluke, you know.
I want to ask you about David Byrne, because he's one of the most talented guys
incredible.
around.
That's another thing where it's just like I had some friends that were working with him, producers.
Yeah.
And so I played on one song on one of his records called Feelings. The Civil Wars with Sterling Campbell playing drums.
Dude, that guy is awesome.
So Sterling and I played on this one track, or he probably played on more. I just played on one song. And then I played on another thing that David did with Marissa Monte, this Brazilian singer, and as a cover of Jobim's Waters of March. I played bass on that. That was on a Red Hot in Rio. They were these series of records that were, you know, the Red Hot series. It was like a series of albums that came out with different artists, you know, benefits for the rainforest and that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And so I played on one song on that with David. So that was just session. Like, I didn't get to know David or anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You didn't get to smell his genius in this.
Yeah, none of that. But like, you know, it's just a credit that I have, you know, like I'm on a
great credit.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's exciting, and I'm happy about it. It was, you know, it's cool to be on a record with him.
Now, he's not an original guy from New York, I don't think, but he's like, every time you think of him, you associate with New York. Yeah, with him and his bicycle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've read his book, The Bicycle Diaries.
Is it good? I haven't read it.
It's a really good book. Yeah, I think he's wonderful. I like David a lot. David Byrne a lot. He's great. Sterling
Campbell's a great guy too. Great drummer, super good guy.
Yeah, another New York sort of legend. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
Bowie and like him, he's incredible.
Yeah, Bowie, B-52s.
So, yeah.
And then Gov't Mule. How'd you get the gig with them?
I got the gig with them. It happened, I think, I'm pretty sure, yeah, Audley Freed recommended me.
Oh, wow.
Because Audley was close with Warren and knew them over the years. You know, of course, Gov't Mule and the Crows, and, you know, they were all like, you know.
They're both from North Carolina, I believe, too.
One big clique, yeah. And Audley's from North Carolina, and Warren's from North Carolina. And so they'd known each other for a long time. You know, Audley had Cry of Love, and, you know, and Warren was with the Allman Brothers. Like, it was all just one, you know, everyone.
Yeah, like an extended clique, sort of.
Yeah, like an extended family, so to speak. So I think after Woody died, you know, they didn't really know what they were going to do. And it was, I think, a difficult time for them, whether to keep the band going, you know. And then David Schools came in, played bass with them. And they kind of did this thing of rotating bass players.
Yeah, they had that album. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's called The Deepest End, where they had I'm not part of that, but they had like George Porter and all these different, it was like a tribute to Alan, you know?
Yeah.
Which was really cool that they did that, you know? It's like this great tribute to him. And because, man, he was a force, you know? He's, you know, very different from how I play, but he's incredible. And he passed away. And so I think they didn't know how they were going to carry on, but somehow they got a lot of support from the community saying, man, you guys got to carry on somehow. And so for a year or two, I think they did this rotating bass player thing, and I was recommended. And at some point I got called and said, they were like, hey, do you want to come play some shows with us? So I went out. It was like me on the bus with David Schools, George Porter did some, and like we would do certain songs. Like I would come up for like 4 or 5, and then I'm spacing on his name. I feel terrible now. The bass player from Metallica, who's not in Metallica anymore.
Man, I've never been I know the guy you're talking about, but I can see him, but I don't know his name.
Yeah, he's not there anymore, but he was their second bass player. He was in the mix too, like he was doing some dates with them. God, I can't believe I'm sorry, I'm spacing.
No worries.
It'll come to me. But and so I went out with them in 2002, like in the spring of 2002, because the Crows thing had ended in 2001. Like on Halloween, we did our last gig in Boston. And there's a live record that then later came out that I'm on. It's like a double live Black Crowes record. But anyway, that ended. And so in the spring of '02, I got called to do, be part of this rotating thing with them. And then, I'm trying to remember, man, funny, the memory thing.
It gets worse, don't worry.
And so we went out and I did the spring run and it went well, and at one point there was a gig where it was just me. Like, it was like, okay, man, we want to do some gigs with, somehow it worked out where it was like, I'm the only one there or that was available,
Right.
And so I learned all these tunes and we did a gig. It was at the Stone Pony outside in Asbury Park.
Yeah. That place been around forever.
And, but in the interim, as I was doing some of these gigs, I auditioned for John Scofield's Uber Jam.
Oh, right. With Avi.
With Avi
Bortnick, yes.
And Adam Deitch on drums. Amazing
Yeah.
music. And, I'd always been a huge Scofield fan, from Miles and his solo records. And, he's one of the greatest and nicest human beings you could ever work for. And so I had auditioned for John, and he offered me the gig. And I was like, because I don't consider myself a jazz guy, and John's a heavy jazz cat, but like he was doing this thing, the Uber Jam, which was more like a groove. Avi was triggering loops on the laptop, and it was more funky groove R&B based stuff.
Right.
Some kind of experimental funk stuff with Adam in there, and so I went and auditioned, and I got the gig. So then I was doing these, but the John thing hadn't started yet. So then after the Stone Pony gig, Warren came up to me and was like, hey man, that was great. That went really well. What are you doing this fall? Can you do a whole run with us? And I had to say no, because I had just gotten the gig with John Scofield.
John Scofield, yeah.
So I told him, like, in the trailer behind the Stone Pony, I was like, man, I can't do it, Like, I'd love to, but I it's really good. And it was fun playing. It was exciting playing with them,
Yeah.
Because they were also adding the keyboards. Danny Lewis was old, and he's an amazing keyboard player.
Incredible.
And like incredible musician. And so it was even more appealing for me. Like the power trio thing, I wasn't sure that, I loved that Danny was there playing B3 and clavinet, and, so it was something that I did want to do, but I was very, very excited about getting this gig with John Scofield and getting to do that. That like meant the world to me, man, to get to do that. Because when I auditioned, I was like, well, this will be a good story. Like I got to audition for John Scofield, because I was so, I don't play jazz, man. He's never going to hire me, but I'll go do it, whatever. Because their bass player, Jesse Murphy, who played on the first Uber Jam record, amazing bass player, he recommended me to John. And John had tried a bunch of people, and Jesse kept going, man, I think Andy's the right guy for you.
How come he had another commitment, or what happened?
He had this band called the Brazilian Girls, and they were kind of blowing up. It was like a poppy thing, and he was a band guy, and they'd gotten signed, and there was like a lot of hype around them, and so he wanted, he couldn't do John's thing anymore. So he had to leave. So he had recommended me to, when John asked him, like, well, who do you recommend, Jesse? Who do you like around town? Kind of thing. And Jesse and I have been friends and had a lot of common friends, and so Jesse recommended me. It's just like I said earlier, there's always one person that I can pinpoint. So Jesse really recommended, was nice to recommend me, and I went and auditioned, and it was interesting audition because I went in just without Avi. It was just Adam and John and I, and John didn't want to learn anything. He's like, we're just gonna jam, because he just wanted to see how it would feel.
Right.
Like he didn't want to have any. He was just like, let's just play some grooves, you and Adam. So we got together in a room. We just started grooving and playing grooves. And I brought my old P bass with the flat wounds, And that's kind of what he was looking for. He didn't want some modern 5-string, because Jesse played this old Mustang bass, and with some effect pedals, and so I brought a few effects too, and you know, and it was fun, but I walked away thinking like, I'm not going to get this gig.
Why did you think that?
I don't know, because that's just me. Like, I'm always like, man, there's so many better people out there that can do this. I'm not, and also my jazz insecurity that I'm not like a jazz guy.
Yeah.
John's like legendary jazz guitar player.
Sure.
You know, who's done so many different things, you know, I mean, John's just incredible, you know, he's one of the greats.
Yeah, for sure.
But then he called me, you know, and was like, hey, man, I listened to the tape, you know, he recorded it. And it's like, man, it felt really good. Can you come back again? And so I went back and auditioned again. But to circle back to the Gov't Mule thing, so I had gotten this gig with Sco, as we call him a lot, Sco. So when Warren asked me to do this fall thing, I was like, man, I just committed to John Scofield, you know. And we were going to do a new record with John, which I did. I did this record called Up All Night with him, the follow-up to the Uber Jam record. And so I had this huge full touring schedule with Scofield, you know, and I was very excited.
Around the world?
Yeah, all over the place. Yeah,
that's great.
A lot of Europe and States, and you know, yeah, it's a lot of touring. And so I did a whole year with John. But then what happened was, I guess I'm not really, you know, I'm trying to think about this now. I kept in touch with Warren. Warren would call me on occasion, you know, because I think they were also just, you know, they were just trying to figure out what they were going to do. But they had offered me this to be the one guy for this fall tour, not giving me like offering me the gig as a band member kind of thing.
Yeah, just to see like.
But I'd already, just the same with the Joan and the Black Crowes thing. Like I'd already committed to John. I was super excited. There was no way in hell that I was going to not do John Scofield, because I was so excited that I got this gig, and I really got into it, the music, and playing with Avi and Adam, you know, they're just both so great. And John, it was so fun and exciting, you know, and I learned a lot playing with those guys, and you know, kicked my butt, you know. It was really a great experience. So I had to say no to Warren, you know. And he's not necessarily a guy that's used to hearing no, you know, he's a pretty famous guy, and you know, and a lot of people wanted that gig.
Who wound up doing it for the fall?
Well, no, they just kind of still kept cycling different players, and Warren and I kept in touch. And then at one point when the Scofield thing was sort of winding down, and John is, you know, known for changing it up and doing different styles, different things, like doing a jazz trio with Steve Swallow, and, you know, or doing, you know, he's always reinventing himself and doing these interesting projects. And it's not, you know, just because you have a gig with him doesn't mean you're going to be on the next round of gigs, you know. Right. Not the kind of thing where like, oh, I'm with John Scofield now, I'm cool, I'm just going to, you know, there's things that he's not going to hire me for because it's not my wheelhouse, or he likes playing with lots of different people, you know. He's got a whole you know, huge group of people he can choose from. So knowing that, then when Warren finally called and said, hey man, you know, how would you feel like we want to offer you to be in the band, you know, and we're going to need to know like soon, you know.
Yeah.
Scofield thing was winding down, so.
Oh, so Scofield was all right. So timing was finally right.
Timing was kind of working out, you know, because I just didn't know like how much more I would play with John, you know. And I actually went to him and talked to him about it, you know. And he was super cool, man. He was like, man, you should, you know, if they're offering you like a position in the band, and you can, you know, that's work, and you know. You know, be in this band, like, you know, so he sort of gave me his blessing, you know,
which is great. It
was really cool. You know, he was just very, you know, I mean, he was a little like, oh, that's too bad, but you know, I understand. I don't really know what, you know, the future is here with this band or what I'm going to do. So yeah, it makes sense, you know.
Sure.
So, but we were cool. Like we parted on good terms, you know, and it was all very cool. And I ended up playing with him more again later, you know. A bunch more even after I left the Mule situation, and I ended up playing with John a lot more over the years, you know. and did another record with him and toured with him again. And, you know, it's like we kept in touch, and he's just an amazing person, John. He's one of the greatest people I've ever worked for, you know, as far as just, you know, he's just a solid human being, you know. But yeah, so then that's how I got the Gov't Mule gig. And then I think Dave Schools also had a hand in like recommending me, you know, because he was playing in this band Widespread Panic.
Widespread Panic, yeah, sure.
He wasn't going to join that band. And then I think, you know, Audley recommended me, and I think then Dave was like, yeah, I think Andy would be a good fit, you know. And so then that's how that happened. And then I joined Gov't Mule, and I was in that band for 5.5 years. You know, it was a long run, and we did a lot of records, and we toured all over the planet. And, you know, it was a great experience for me. It was you know, I'd never been in a band.
Right.
You know, like you know, with the Crows, it was like, oh, I think I'm in a band, but then it ended, you know, it was like
right.
over with. So it was like, here I am back, you know. So I always felt more like a side man, I guess you could say. You know what I mean?
I totally get it.
Yeah, like I always wanted to be in a band, and like, but it just didn't work out that way for me, you know.
Sure.
I just became more of a side man, you know. And the Mule thing was the band thing, and that was cool. But like, after 5.5 years, I was just ready to move on, you know.
Sure.
I just wasn't ready to commit my life to that.
Totally get it, man.
I wanted to have some other experiences, and just, you know, it just didn't work out, and it was fine. It's all good. You know, they've got Jorgen. He worked out great.
Yeah.
You know, all good.
One more Mule question.
Yeah.
Matt is such a good drummer, I think, anyway. How is he different to play with than other drummers that you've played with? I mean, just like, what was your combination for the success of U2?
I think the combination of the success of that was that, you know, Matt has his own, like, he's very, like, I don't know how to describe it. He's kind of has this, like, Ginger Baker meets Mitch Mitchell.
Bingo.
You know?
Yeah. But
like,
it's his own thing. Yeah, but you're right.
Like, he's very unique in the way he plays. You know, there's no one that plays like him. You know?
Yeah.
And it took some adjusting, you know, like we kind of found our way with each other.
Sure.
You know, I was coming into a band that had already established a certain rhythm, so to speak, you know, a certain way of playing together. And
well,
so
also,
I was coming in. So like, I felt like it was sort of upon me to like adjust to where he was coming from and fit in.
Yeah.
More me fitting in with him than him fitting in with me.
Sure, I get that.
That makes sense, you know?
It totally makes sense. But
then he did really, like, you know, we would talk conceptually about stuff, or we'd work stuff out, you know, talk about it, or also just work it out in the playing. You know, he kind of realized that I was very different from Alan Woody, who he had been playing with for years, you know.
Right.
So for him, it was also an adjustment, you know. Sure. Like, here's this new guy, you know, who plays very differently.
Yeah,
you know?
okay.
Also, there was a keyboard added, so the bass roll maybe didn't have to be quite what it was. You know, it was just different. Like, it was growing a different way, you know, if that makes sense.
It totally does, man.
Suddenly you're adding the keyboard, so there's a bigger sound, and it's a different sound, you know. And my approach, I think, you know, worked well with having keyboards in the band as well. Not that I've done trio gigs, you know.
Sure.
Like with Robben Ford, I did a lot of just power trio gigs, you know. But that's a whole nother challenge, you know. But so Matt and I, we came together nicely, you know. We recorded some records, but it was, you know, there was always a little push and pull, but that also made for exciting gigs.
Yeah.
You know, where we really, like, you know, and sometimes it would be hit or miss, like any band. Like, some nights it would all kind of really come together great, and then some nights it was like, oh, well, what happened there, you know. And that, I don't know, that's
just the normal stuff. That's
any band, you know. It's never perfect every night, you know. You find your stride, and you hit a run where it's really grows, and then, you know, comes a little shaky period, and then you readjust again, or new songs.
That's everything, man. It's like everything in life.
Everyone's coming from a different place. Like everyone has a different background, you know, and experience. So, you know.
Andy, any other gigs that you want to chat about that were meaningful to you, or just something cool happened there?
Just any other gigs, you mean?
Yeah.
Like, man, I just feel, honestly, I feel really lucky that I've gotten to play with all these people. You know, playing with Robben Ford was thrilling.
Yeah.
Really great, man. One of the greats, you know. And playing with his trio was really exciting. Toss Panos on drums. Great drummer.
Oh, he's a hell of a drummer, yeah.
He'd be fun to interview, I think, too. He's really wonderful. And became a good friend. And yeah, playing with Robben was really thrilling because, you know, I've been a fan of his too growing up. You know,
blues.
I had his first solo record, and I loved him playing with Jimmy Witherspoon. You know, he's really into the blues, and I related to him in that way. And so we had a lot of fun talking blues records.
And he's like a Bay Area guy, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, he's from Northern California.
Yeah,
he's a Northern California guy, you know. But yeah, that was an amazing experience getting to play with him. And Mike Landau, man, another.
Oh my God.
Playing with Mike's definitely also been a highlight for me, you know. Playing with that guy, he's just absolutely amazing.
He really is.
I toured a lot with him, and that's been.
How did you connect with him?
You know, through Robben, actually.
Okay.
And the Robben gig, Charlie Drayton got me connected. The drummer Charlie Drayton.
Sure.
He's one of the greats. Wonderful, amazing drummer in New York. He had recommended me to Robben, and then I started playing with Robben. And then Robben did a week engagement at Yoshi's in Oakland, at this jazz club Yoshi's.
Yeah, I know.
He added Mike as a second guitar player. He's like, man, I'm going to add a second guitar.
That's
just
pretty
to have fun and, you know, spice it up a little bit. I'm going to get Mike Landau. And I was like,
pretty intimidating.
Yeah, you know, it was like
intimidating.
Like, oh my God, like I don't belong here, you know, like like how is this happening to me, you know, like, you know, I'm pretty self-critical and like,
you are, man, but
I'm always like, but somehow, yeah, it was so fun playing with Robben. And then he added Mike that week, and then Mike and I just hit it off. And at some point, Mike rang and was like, hey, man, would you ever want to do some of my gigs? You know, it was really fun playing with you.
That's nice, man.
And I was like, yeah, you know. So then I got to tour with Mike in Europe, and I've toured with him last year in Asia. We went to China and Korea and Japan, and you know, so I played with Mike a lot, and I got to record on one of his records, a couple songs on his Organic Instrumentals record that he put out a couple years ago. And you know, and he's just another just amazing musician.
Yeah, he's super talented guy.
You know,
he's out of this world.
I mean, his discography is, you know, from here to the moon.
Yeah.
And he's played with so many people, but he's just a wonderful player and just fun to hang with. And, you know, so yeah, playing with him was a thrill. Man, I feel lucky, you know, I've gotten to play with a lot of people who I had listened to and thought, man, it'd be cool to play with them one day. Or, wow, can you imagine what it would be like to play with them? And then it happened, you know? So I feel really lucky, and I feel really, lucky, you know, and things work out, you know, and then things don't work out, you know, it's a flow thing, you know.
Yeah.
And, Mike Landau, man, just incredible.
Let me ask you, what were some of the low points or dark periods you've had to deal with, and how'd you get through them in life?
Well, I think that's an important question, and I think that everyone has them, or at least I've had them, you know.
No, everyone's had them, and everyone's had them, because if they say they're not, they're lying. You know, I only had one person on the show say that.
And I've had plenty. I mean, I can go on and on, but like I've had plenty of struggles with myself, you know, playing with other people, you know, with Gov't Mule at the end, I just wasn't happy there anymore, and I needed to go. You know, It was just necessary for me to go. I'm not going to get into the details of why.
No, you don't have to.
You know, and I don't have any ill will for those guys, you know, and I'm proud of my time that I spent there, and I got to do that and experience that with those guys. but like, I felt really miserable at the end, and I had to go, and I didn't know where I was going to go. And I was just going through a lot of just personal stuff in my life. And yeah, there's always low points, man. There's struggles or self-doubt, we're like, to keep it going, that pressure, not pressure, but like, yeah, like, because you start to see that things end in music, bands end and careers end and people lose jobs or don't get any more gigs. And, everyone has their time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's an important thing to realize. You're going to have your time. And at some point, there's going to be a whole bunch of younger guys coming up, just like you were the young guy once, getting a bunch of gigs and doing well, or, you have your time. But yeah, there's been some low points for sure. I've had to do a lot of work on myself. Like we had talked about that a little bit earlier, where it's like, self-doubt or just going through personal things, losing your parents, all kinds of, I became a father. Like suddenly it's not about me anymore, and that's beautiful and awesome. But it's also like, okay, like now the music thing is maybe secondary to a degree,
Let me ask you this.
That's just a natural flow of things, like I'm 53 now, and I've had tons of experiences and I've been all over the world and I've played with some amazing people. But yeah, there's been dark times and where I didn't know like what's next, or I've had periods of no work and thought like, oh man, this is it. I think I'm done. It's time to look for a job, or, and then suddenly something happens or the phone rings and it's like, hey man, can you do this tour? Or, hey, can you, like I got to sub a lot on the Rosanne Cash gig. That was super exciting for me too. Like
was that
really
Duke
great.
Levine? Was he playing with
No,
him?
John Leventhal.
Oh yeah, okay.
Great, So like I got to play with John Leventhal and Rosanne. They're married, and so I was subbing for Zev Katz, a really amazing another kind of legend New York bass player. But he couldn't do it, and so I had done this gig with John Leventhal in this club, and he remembered me. And then when Zev couldn't do it, I got called to sub on that gig. So I ended up doing quite a few gigs subbing for Zev on the Rosanne Cash gig. And that was great because this other friend of mine was playing drums in it that I knew from New York. And it was like, oh, cool, another cool opportunity. And it was a very different gig. It was a singer-songwriter gig. You just play very simply, you're supporting the songs. I mean, like in any other group, you're supporting songs, but like with that, it's about.
Yeah, I mean, but you're playing a little differently with her than with Gov't Mule, for sure.
With her than you're playing with Robben, or like it's another kind of thing that you have to adjust to and learn how to be part of the community and part of the, and that's my thing anyway. I think that's an important thing for me to express, is that I don't feel it's ever about me, in any band. It's about the whole thing, I think you're there to support, and especially as a bass player, like it's a supportive role. I mean, there's bass players that obviously, play circles around me and can solo really up high on the neck and play super fast. And that's all amazing. And there's guys that have their whole careers, it's about them. And they're, and I've always been part of the rhythm section, like part of the whole, the team. And supporting an artist and I'm happy with that. Like, I don't like,
you don't have the need to,
like, that's just me,
like,
I'm not speaking for anyone else, just my experiences. I like being part of, I don't have to be up there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't desire that so much. So like, I'm happy when I can support a song or the groove or, a soloist, playing behind someone like Robben or John or these great guitar players that I've gotten to play with,
So if you can go back and give advice to young Andy, assuming you'd listen, what advice would you have given? Yeah, right. Because
that's funny.
What advice might you have given yourself that would have made life easier for you? Business, professional, either one or both?
I think like for me, like I've often over time, especially the older I got and the more busy I got and the more gigs I got, it's in an odd way, like the more success I had, the more sort of self-doubt sort of started creeping in.
Like
that whole thing,
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that they call it, or like that you're a fraud somehow and you're going to get discovered. And And what a waste that is, because it's just like, and you know, I still struggle with it sometimes, but like in a way you have to just trust, you know, what it is that you like and what you want to do, and just, I don't know, yeah, it's a hard one to answer. There's so many aspects to it, you know, but I think just trying to have, you know, have faith in yourself, and be around the people that are going to make you feel good, and that like what you like, and that, you know, not just musically, but also just as human beings, you know, like being around good people, and trusting your own, you know, this is what I like, and I want to, like, you know, like for instance, when I started doing the club date gigs, you know, I thought like I had to do that because I needed to make more money, and like, so I did that, but I was miserable.
You mean the club dates around the city?
Yeah, when I was doing these wedding gigs, you know.
Oh,
like,
those, yeah.
out for me. So like, and then I realized that, and like, but it took me a while, and then I went back just playing like, you know, the dirty, smoky clubs. But then that worked out for me. Like
led you to something else.
Like I went back to making significantly less money, but in the end, it was worth it, because then I started getting cooler gigs, you know, because I kind of stuck to my guns. But sometimes I think we don't do that. Like we're kind of, especially nowadays. I mean, back then, this is like pre-cell phone, pre-social media, you know. But I think it's important to, yeah, just, I don't know, have faith in yourself and trust your instincts.
So let me ask you this.
Be around people that are supportive of you, and that, you know, that you feel good being in a room with, not just as humans, but musically, like, you know, that you be around the people, you know, you love the same kind of music, you're coming from the same place.
For someone out there who is,
I don't know if that was a very good answer, but that's all I can come up with right now.
Yeah, it was, you know, trust yourself more. Yeah,
trust yourself more. I didn't always do that, you know. I'd be like, oh, maybe I should. Oh, I don't know. But in the end, I kind of did do that, and it ended up working out. You know, like, you know what I mean? Like, I ended up getting some really great gigs, and I feel really fortunate, you know, that I had the experiences I had, and having the confidence, you know, like, because I sometimes would lack confidence, or think like, you know, I get really nervous, like, oh, I just got this gig, what if I'm gonna suck, or like, you know, like, just all this self-doubt stuff is just a waste of, you know, just do the work, learn the music, bring yourself to, you know.
And
let the ego thing go a little, like, just, you know, play the music and don't get all in your head, you know. Like, I'm in my head a lot, you know. I've had to work hard on getting out of my head.
And a guy told me a story recently. I have Mike Wanchick. He's going to be coming on the show soon. The Mellencamp's producer from Bloomington.
Okay.
And he was telling me this story about a woman he used to work for. I don't know what it was, but he was younger in his career, and he was doing something like managing a studio or something along those lines. And he'd come in and he'd have all these worries, like, oh, I'm concerned if this doesn't happen, and if these guys don't bring this right equipment, or if these guys aren't ready, you know, were we double booked? And she said something to him, and I thought it was really clever. She said, Mike, worry in order. Like, worry in order of the times, you know, when you need to worry about that, worry about it, you know?
Right in front of you.
Yeah, right.
Do what's happening right now.
Right. Worry in order. Like, if that's not here yet, you don't need to worry about it, you know? And I thought that was a very practical way of saying, fucking be present, man.
Which is basically be present, which is what we talked about in the beginning about you know, Buddhism, and like just being present, you know, because you're not going to find yourself back in the past. That's done. And no one knows. We don't know how much time we have on the planet, or
absolutely,
what's going to happen next week. So like, just make the most of just being present with the people that you're with. You know, try to be a better listener. Try to, you know, have some compassion and empathy for others. Be part of the community, you know, support the music as a, you know, if you're in the studio with a band, have a positive vibe, you know, try to make it happen. Bring the best that you can bring to the rhythm section to the whole thing, you know, be part of the band, you know, support one another. I think that's really key, you know, and be present, just be in the moment.
Let me ask you this. Every time I've talked to you, I've walked away thinking, man, this guy's really compassionate. Where did that come from? Because you are very, you know, like,
Well,
that's your.
I mean, it's, you know, it's, I don't know, it's just, I don't know that I'm that, I mean, yeah, I just, you know, I've done a lot of work on myself, I guess, you know, trying to grow and understand myself better and just be more here and present and be with, you know, and also loss, you know, going through loss, I think losing your parents and losing friends to diseases and realizing that, you know, I mean, now that I'm in my 50s, you realize, you know, man, like, you know, we're not here that long, you know.
Yeah, we got less time ahead of us than we do behind us.
Exactly. Like, and that's okay to acknowledge that and like, and come to terms with that. And,
yeah,
you know, and I think we live in a culture and a society where there's a lot of like denial, like, oh, that's going to happen to other people, but not me, you know, like we're all like, you know, we're all mortal. I mean, the only thing that we can count on is change, and things will change, you know. You'll have a bunch of amazing gigs. You won't have a bunch of amazing gigs. You know, at some, you know, everything comes to an end and to a close, you know. So just be in it when you're in it, enjoy it and treasure it, you know, the people that you're around. Like I don't know if I'll ever play with Robben Ford again, but man, it was so great that I got to play with him.
Right.
I treasure that, and I remember those times and those moments in a positive way. And or whoever I played with, you know, or got things that I got to do, you know, it's good to remind yourself of all the fortunes that you've had, you know, all the good things that have happened to you, you know. And
so to stay in gratitude is what you're saying.
yeah, gratitude I think is super important, you know, and I think that comes with experiencing loss and things ending, you know. Like things don't last, you know.
Yeah.
But that's just normal. It's like, and that's that way for everybody. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, some people are lucky; they're maybe in a band for 40 years, and it works perfectly for them, and it's smooth sailing all the way. And somehow they're, you know.
Well, I don't think it's smooth. I don't think you can't be in any relationship for 40 years where it's smooth sailing all the way.
Like sometimes I'll think about like other musicians that I know that I admire, like, you know, like Hutch Hutchinson's been with Bonnie Raitt forever.
Right.
It's like, man, how cool is that? You know, like such a cool, and because, you know, I've always been like, I want to do that gig. You know, I love Bonnie Raitt, you know.
Yeah.
Like that's a gig I could see myself on, like the way I play and the music that I like. And, you know, I'd love to play with Bonnie Raitt, or like, you know, I would have loved to have played with Tom Petty, but like, you know, you're not going to get that gig, you know, it's pretty unlikely, you know.
Right.
Or, you know, back when he was around or whatever, like just, yeah.
I get you. Do you hear my cat? He's like knocking down the door. He's braying like a goat. It's so funny. Thank you for answering that. That was a nice answer. Do you what's the first record you ever bought? Do you remember that?
The first record that I ever bought, man, you know, I'm not sure. I mean, I remember the first record I have real strong memories of is Sgt. Pepper.
Okay.
Like as like a 9-year-old or something, or an 8-year-old. Like that's like a huge, because I remember just staring at the cover and studying all
the characters,
collage and the characters, and then the music, and then looking at their pictures and like opening up the record, and like, yeah, like that's a really strong memory for me, Sgt. Pepper, like that, you know.
Give me your just for right now, top 3 Desert Island discs. Top
3?
Yeah.
Man, that's pretty hard, man.
I know.
3?
Just for like this moment, knee-jerk reaction.
This moment, knee-jerk reaction. I would say Donny Hathaway live with Willie Weeks on bass. Definitely way up there. I would say Inner Vision, Stevie Wonder.
That is a very popular record. That's
like one of the greatest records ever. Man, I don't know. I love so many records. It's so hard, but yeah, you know, the B.B. King live at Cook County Jail.
All right.
But, the list could go on and on.
Of course.
And, if I only had those 3 records, I'm sure there'd be a lot of other records I'd miss after a while.
All right, man. Tell me your favorite New York City food.
My favorite New York City food. I think the Italian food is really good in New York.
Any specific place?
Well, I like going to Bar Petey a lot. It's this place down on 6th Avenue. It's really good.
6th Avenue, what, in the Village?
Yeah. It's like near 6th and Bleecker.
Okay, I'm going to have to check that out.
I'm big on Japanese food, and I love Mexican food, but it's not quite, it's never quite like in California. With, my California roots.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a good place?
It's not like Mission, like going down to the Mission in San Francisco, and, I got some favorite places there. So, but, you can find, it's gotten better in New York. It's just not quite. And I love Japanese food.
Yeah,
Really
I do too.
Japanese food. There's some great Japanese in New York.
Great
Italian, but I haven't gone out to a restaurant and,
Oh, because of COVID. Man,
yeah,
have you ever
I've gone a little bit. Like there's a great little Italian place around the corner from me here in Brooklyn that I love. That I've become friendly with the owner. It's really, really good.
I'm going to ask you if you've been to this Mexican place. It's in the Village. I think maybe like on McDougal. It's not Dos Caminos. Man, I can't think of it. There's one uptown, Toloache. You ever been to that place?
No.
It's really good food. Toloache. Man, it is really good food.
Okay.
Oh God, yeah. God, yeah.
Check it out.
They got voted like the only reason I found out about them. I was reading something one day. They were like voted best margarita, and I went up to. It was in Midtown with my wife. 10 years ago we went there, and it turns out they have one in the Village, which is like a little cooler place to hang out with. So,
nice.
Tough question. What do you like most about yourself?
That's a hard question, man.
I know.
I don't know.
You can do it.
Most about myself. Shit. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that.
No, man, you could do this.
Really?
Yeah, of course.
I would say, I think I'm a pretty good friend to my friends.
What else?
I mean, it's a double-edged sword. It's like, I feel like I do have a lot of like empathy and compassion for people. But sometimes it also makes you like, hypersensitive.
Yeah.
But that sometimes that can, I don't know about getting in the way, but like, it's just, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard question to answer, man. Really hard question to answer. I'm usually more like, I could easily go down to like, oh, I suck. I'm no good.
That's a hard question. I know, man.
Really work on that. What I'm saying is like I've had to work on that both as a musician and as a human being. Like,
sure,
I could easily beat myself up. I've wanted to quit playing music a million times.
Yeah.
Because I have a shitty gig or I have a run of gigs where I just didn't feel I played so good, and I'm just like, man, I suck. I'm no good.
But you didn't. Why?
Because I love it, like I love to play, and I love being around musicians, and I love music, and I love the challenge of learning a bunch of songs for an artist and then going out and playing them. And like, I feel like every gig's like a new, no matter how many gigs you've done, every gig is like, okay, here we go. Here's a new chance to do it, and not necessarily to get it perfect or anything like that, but here's a new opportunity, like, where you just throw away everything that you've ever done. And like, even if it's a little club gig, here we go. We're going to play some music. Wow,
so
let's lock in, let's play together. Let's listen to each other, like, let's get into it. Like, it's a new opportunity, it's exciting, and that's kind of keeps me going, I think,
Well,
like that sort of camaraderie with others,
right.
connecting with the drummer, or with your friends that you've known forever, and like looking at each other and you're playing and it's really feeling good, you know, and, you know, just like that keeps you going, you know, you live for that. Like that's the ultimate high, sort of like where you can really be present, you know, practicing presence, you know, away from music is more challenging, but when you're really in a groove and you're having a really good time playing music and it's sounding good and you can hear everything, you connect with everyone musically and personally, like there's nothing better than that, you know. And then if you're doing it on a cool level where you're traveling or you're in Paris or you're in Istanbul and you have a great gig and then you're eating Turkish food afterwards, you know, outside on the street, and you're like, man, this is the greatest thing.
Yeah, I could easily see
And like,
that.
so
Yeah.
you keep, you know, for that, you know, you're like, oh man, I love
So
but I got to fit 16 hours on a flight, you know, but we're going to play, we're going to play music for the people. And like, you know, and it just can feel so good, you know, like it feels so good, and it can feel terrible. I mean, I've had terrible gigs too, where it's just like afterwards you beat the crap out of yourself, or you think it's all your fault, you know, that the gig didn't go well. You know, I mean, I'm sure a lot of musicians can relate to that.
Absolutely.
Maybe some can, or some wouldn't want to admit it or whatever, you know, but, you know, yeah.
What's the happiest?
I mean, that's what keeps you going, I think, is that the love for it, you know, and the camaraderie and the community of it, you know, creating these like, man, we're making these sounds happen together, like just breaking it down to the most basic, you know, man, we're playing music together. Like,
tell me the happiest time or happiest moment in your life.
The happiest moment in my life, man, I think becoming a father is definitely one way up there. Pretty thrilling, pretty amazing, mind-blowing experience.
I would imagine you took that a lot more.
Terrifying and glorious and happy all at once, you know. Yeah. But like pretty profound, you know. And being a dad and you know, juggling all that. Yeah, I mean, that's made me really happy. And traveling has made me happy. And friendships, really good friends, really great gigs. You know, human connection, having a really good conversation with someone, with a friend that you're close with, learning about yourself. I mean, those are all things that make me happy, you know, like where you like suddenly a light goes on, like, hey, wait a minute, I'm all right. Or like, hey, you know, connecting with people, you know, just on a human level without like taking yourself too seriously, or I'm this guy, or this cat, like, you know, I play with blah, 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 you know, like, fuck that.
That go on a lot?
I mean, yeah, you always run, you know, there's the ego thing, I think, is tricky, you know, and I think it's something that everyone has to somehow navigate, and I think it can be detrimental too, you know. I mean, that's the one thing, like, that I love about John Scofield, man. He's such a giant, you know, but he's a great example. And there's a lot of examples, but he's just one that comes to mind first thing. And if you talk to a lot of musicians that have experienced being around him and worked with him and played with him, he's so cool, man. He's so like, yes, and you can hear it in his playing, like he's got so much humor in his playing. You know, like his playing is like, it's serious and it's bad ass and it's tough and it's like all those things, but there's all this humor in it. And as a human being, he's just like very down to earth, and just, you know, like after the gig, he's wrapping up his own cable, putting his gig back on, like, hey man, want to walk back to the hotel? You know, like he's just like, it's like, man, like, and yet he's this guy.
Were you part of that? Mule?
What's that?
When did Mule do that record with Scofield? Was that after you left?
That was with Alan Woody.
That was Woody. Okay.
Yeah, that was way. That was like.
That was
with it, right.
Great. That was a great
yeah,
set.
Pretty cool. Yeah, them together. That was pretty cool. But like, he's just a great example of that, you know.
Has your life been different than what you'd imagined?
Life been different. I mean, I don't know what I imagined, you know, like I moved to New York, and I don't know when that clicks in anyone's life. I mean, I don't think I had a real plan. I just knew like I wanted to play music, and I wanted to see if I could make it, maybe I could do it like in real life without having to get a day job.
Right, in real life, that's funny.
You know, that's what I imagined, and it worked out that way.
Hmm.
You know, I've done it for 30 years in New York. You know, now we're facing a whole nother environment.
Right.
But like, I don't know what. Yeah, I'm not sure that I could really say. I mean, I feel like, yeah. I'm trying to think how to word it, but I don't know what I imagined. I mean, I imagined like, oh, I want to be a musician, and I want to tour the world, and you know, and play with bands, and play with people, and be able to, you know, and it just was all these small little steps, and then it happened, you know.
Yeah.
And there were, you know, amazing moments on the way, and there were disappointments, and there were happy times, and like, so it's just, I don't know that we know, you know, what's going to happen. We just put our best foot forward. We practice, and we play, and we connect with people, and follow our gut about what music we love and what we want to play and how we want to play with people. And hopefully you fall into a scene where you're with like-minded people that feel similarly to how you feel about music, and being together in a community or traveling together or whatever, you know.
Sure.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, you know, and on some level, dreams came true, you know, like, I mean, I remember hearing the first Black Crowes record going, man, or the second one, that's when I really got into them. I loved their cover of that Otis Redding tune, Hard to Handle.
Yeah.
Then their second record was like so incredible. And I remember listening to it over and over again, going, man, I'm looking at the cover of that record, you know, and I was like,
Amorica, was that it?
Oh, that's rock and roll, you know. No, Southern Harmony.
Southern Harmony, yeah, blues.
And I remember thinking like, man, how cool would it be to play in a band like that, you know?
And there you go.
And then I got to play with them. Like, I mean, you know, like I feel like I've been really lucky, you know? But I can't but there's no rhyme or reason to it. It could also not happen. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't know that like I made it happen or I mean, yeah, it's a mystery, you know? Life's a mystery, man.
Sure is, man.
Like all I can say is like, I don't know.
Favorite
like,
place
none of us know anything. Like, I don't know, you know, like it just, you know, I just gigged a lot, and I played, and I, you know, and I had these thoughts, or like with John Scofield, like, I mean, if you would have told me that I'd play with him one day, I would have been like, you're crazy. That ain't never going to happen.
Yeah. So dreams came true, man.
So dreams came true, but like, I don't know what I did. Like, I can't say that there's no method, or there's no instruction manual, you know, there's no books. How to
make your dreams come true.
Yeah. Or how do you get the gig, you know, like, because there's 10 other guys that could have done the gig just as well, or maybe better than me, you know? You know what I mean? Like, yes, I mean,
I totally know what you mean.
Because, like, listen, I'm replaceable, you know,
Yeah, but I don't think that's why people get gigs. Rarely does someone get, I mean, the people I've spoken to, rarely does someone get hired because, man, you're the best bass player we've ever heard. It's
not only about how you play.
Yeah.
Because you can play great and be really good.
And you don't fit in with the guys you're playing with.
Dick, or what if you...
Right, or you could be a dick.
What if you haven't worked out some of your own personal shit, and you bring it to the band, and you're on the bus?
Yeah, that doesn't go over well.
This guy plays good, but like, what a weird hang. Like, this guy's like, you know, or it says socially awkward, or has some big ego, or suddenly thinks he's this or she's that, or whatever, you know, whoever it may be. But you know what I mean?
Totally get it, man. Yeah.
Like, so it's not just the playing, absolutely, you know, because I know for a fact that, and I've been replaced, and bands go on without you, you know.
Sure.
You're replaceable. We're all kind of replaceable. And that's okay too, you know, like, I can only be who I am and do the best I can do. And it's either going to work and people are going to hire you or like you or want to have you around, or they don't, you know?
Yeah.
And so I feel like, yeah, there's no method, or it's hard to say, do this and then this will happen. You know, you just got to be in, like, I love playing the bass. I'm going to go down to the club and play these 3-4 sets a night, 5 nights a week, because I'm 23 years old. And I want to just be out there partying, playing music and hanging out with my friends. And maybe that'll lead to something. And it did for me, you know, but it also doesn't happen for a lot of people. And it also doesn't happen for a lot of people that are really good.
Yeah. I know. I know.
Because maybe they have a drug problem, or maybe they have, I don't know, a severe form of depression, or they have too much self-doubt, or they
What you said,
opportunity, or they put their foot in their mouth, or I don't know, you know, it's like, it's, you know, I've been given a lot of great opportunities, and somehow I was able to meet those and do them. But, you know, there's also going to be a ton of gigs that I'll never get that I would love to have gotten. But, you know, there's only so much time, and there's a million of us bass players. There's only so many gigs. And, like, I feel really, I got lucky, man, you know?
Yeah.
I got really lucky, you know? And, you know, but you have to also be able to back it up. I'm not saying, like, I'm just this nice dude. I can play.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure, I know there's guys that are, you know, I'm always thinking like, oh, that guy plays circles around me, or that guy's better than me, or, oh, you know, but that's just my own crap, my own self-doubt, you know, but like, but I found,
and it's irrelevant to how anybody who's going to hire you thinks also, which is a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true too. So, yeah, I think, but as far as that question, like, is it different than you had imagined, or is it what you had imagined it would be? I think we just don't know as we're getting into it when we're young, you know?
Right.
You know, now obviously at my age and with the experiences I've had and being a dad, you know, suddenly there's different priorities, and there's different, I'm just in a different place now. You know, I want to keep going and playing if it comes back. I want to go on the road, or get hired and play with a band, or be a sideman, or, you know,
sure,
whatever there is to do. I love to play, you know, I want to play with people. But right now with this whole pandemic, it's like, I feel like I have no home, you know, except right here in Brooklyn with my family, you know what I mean? That's beautiful. Like, I'm really lucky, right? And I got my health so far, you know, like, man, you know, gratitude, man.
Oh, I feel you.
Like now, you know, every now and then I'll play down at this barbecue joint in Brooklyn with some friends, outdoors with our masks on, you know. And the first time I did it after not playing with other humans for 5 months, it was like, oh my God, this is great. So cool. I'm playing at a barbecue joint.
Yeah,
you know, like outside, you know, with maybe only half the people really caring or listening, but I'm with my buds and we're playing some music. How great is this? You know, it's all relative, right? It's all perspective. Totally. It's all perspective, I think. And I don't know.
Hey,
I have no answers, bro.
No, you do. We have 2 questions, 2 questions left. Tell me the favorite place you've traveled.
Man, I love going to Japan. I love Japan so much.
That comes up a lot.
I love the food. I love the people. You know,
it's so clean there, isn't it, man? I've never been there, but
you know, the clubs all mostly sound really great. Like, they put a lot of effort into having things sound good over there. I love the food. I love walking around there. It's just, there's something very special about it. I love going there. A lot of musicians feel that way. And I love going to Europe. I love Europe. I love going all over Europe. And, you know, and I've been to other places too, but I would say like Japan and Europe are some of my favorite places, you know. I mean, I've been to some, you know, like I've gotten to go, you know, I've been to Moscow and St. Petersburg to Russia. That was exciting. And, you know, I've gone to Brazil. I mean, there's lots of places I haven't been either, you know, tons of places I haven't been to yet. But I would say out of those places, like going to Turkey, to Istanbul was pretty
cool. That sounded really cool. Who'd you go there with?
So I was Scofield.
Scofield, that's what I thought,
Times with him. I went there with him.
That's so cool.
played there and had day off where I could go to the mosque and the spice market and, you know,
That
walk
coffee there is supposed to be great, was it?
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I had this Turkish coffee one time. It was amazing.
Like, you know, I love going to Europe. It's wonderful. And I've been there a lot. And it's, you know, like going to Paris or Amsterdam, you know, so many wonderful cities to go to and experience, you know, and I feel lucky that I've gotten to go to all these places, you know. And in America too, it's great to travel around the States. And I love New Orleans. I love New Orleans music. I love going down there. You know, I love the West Coast a lot. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful. Chicago's a great city. So many places, man.
Hey, last question, and I can't thank you enough for all your time and just being a great hang. Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that change has been intentional and how much is just a natural part of aging?
I think it's a combination of the two. Like as you get older, your priorities shift, and also being a parent, you know, having an 8-year-old child that I'm raising, you know, I think that's a huge change. My personality, I mean, I would say that I'm trying to not, how do I put this? I mean, I feel I've grown a lot, but there's always more work to do, like working on yourself, really,
Sure.
like self-work. You know, I happen to like a lot of Buddhist literature and reading stuff like that, and that's helped me, like with being more present, practicing being more present, letting go of whatever stories are going around your head that are not positive, you know, letting
Yeah, that's
go
a tough one.
letting go of
That takes a lot of work.
You know, letting go of the past and things that maybe didn't go well, or in relationships, or mistakes you made, or how you made, you know, like, listen, man, I've had my, you know, I didn't always act right or do the right thing, you know. There's things that maybe I didn't do so well or didn't handle the way that I maybe should have or could have.
Yeah.
But I'm also just an imperfect, you know, like I'm just trying to learn. And so I would say in the last 10 years, I've grown a lot and I've learned a lot, and I'm just trying to be kinder to myself and to others, you know, and have more empathy and compassion for other people and for myself, and let go of a lot of the ego crap, you know, because in the end, it just doesn't matter. You know, there's so many things that just don't matter, you know?
Yeah. Compassion is a big part of Buddhism. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I
And
thought so.
also with yourself, like not just with others, but with yourself.
Yeah.
Like,
Forgiving yourself is.
forgiving yourself, forgiving others. Like, I mean, it all sounds like, you know, a long time ago, maybe you would have told me that. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds cheesy, whatever. But I'm realizing now, like, especially if you lose people, like lose friends, lose your parents, like grief, going through those kind of changes in your life that we all go through. We all lose people we love, you know. And suddenly you realize, like, man, what's really important?
Yes.
Like, and for a while for me, it was important, like, oh man, I got this gig and I'm going on tour and, you know, man, I'm doing good. You know, there's part of me, of course, that liked that and was like, yeah, I'm going here and I'm doing this and I'm playing with this person, not in a bragging way, but just within myself.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And realizing like that those things end. And so I feel like what's changed is that I just appreciate what is, and like I have to let go of what, you know, like, okay, I didn't get that gig, or I'm not that guy that does this, or, you know, there's only so much time and there's only so much you can do, you know. And then
Totally,
you're a
man.
dad, you're trying to be a father and a partner and a, you know, and there's, you know, life's multifaceted, you know, it's like there's so much going on. And I think, yeah, I'm just trying to grow, man. I don't know. And, you know, I still practice and I'm trying to get better, but also just like acceptance, you know, accepting like, this is how I play, you know, if you
Your
like
bass
it,
is so cool, man.
if you like how I play, cool. If you don't like how I play, that's okay too. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, totally. Yeah. You got to be like that, man.
Self-acceptance and just being okay with what is and being present. I think those are the biggest changes for me that have happened, and that I'm constantly sort of trying to address. And like I run a lot, like, do a lot of running in the park. I live right by this park, so I run, spend time with my kid. It's not about me, all of this. It's just not about me all the time, and about my story and what I'm doing. And,
I get it.
It's all okay, So we're all just people.
Hey, man, I want to thank you very much for your time and for your sincerity.
I hope it was,
for a nice hang.
I don't know if I answered everything so great, but like
No, man, you got to just be yourself. Answer it like that. That's great.
We talk music, but we also talk life, and
that's what it's about.
Right? It's all like part of it, right? Yeah.
It's always about that, man.
Yeah.
Hey, let me tell people where to find you online. Okay. It's Andy Hess. You can find him at andyhess.com, HESS.
I have a website. It's very out of date because there's nothing to put up there really right now. I'm not
okay, hold on. Stop being self-deprecating for the next 5 minutes. Let me promote you, and then we could talk, and you could be self-deprecating. All right. So a couple of things. If you want to work with Andy on tracks, if you want to hire him, he's available to record some bass tracks for you. And also, if you are interested in working with him and getting some lessons,
we're talking bass.
Yeah, or talking bass, or you just want to dig more into maybe something we touched on in this interview.
Exactly.
Probably as far as bass lessons, maybe if you're a guitar player looking to learn bass, or, you're just a bass player looking to get better, or you like something particular in his style.
Or you're getting into it and you're starting to get gigs and you're wondering about things and how things work. And, just if I can share some experiences. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And so the best place to reach out to him is go to his website at andyhess.com, and there's a tab on there called Contact Andy, and just hit him up on there. And
you can hit me up on there. And I think I might even have my email listed on my website, so you could reach out there too.
Yeah, and also
just go to my website.
Yes, and also he is like really into photography, and so go to his Instagram and follow him on there, and he's got a lot of cool photos he posts up. And anything else, man? Anything else we could sell of yours, man?
No, there's no t-shirts, no hats. There's
God. Well, he's a super nice.
I really appreciate you having me on the show, man. You have a lot of amazing people on the show, and
now I got another amazing person.
I appreciate your positive vibes and your openness and
thank you, man.
Questions. I hope I answered them okay, but
you did marvelous, man.
It's just a wild ride, this thing, life. We're just here and playing some music and being humans, and all we can do, right? But no, it's great to be on the show because you've had so many amazing people on the show. And
thank you, man. Now I have another amazing person, so it's good.
And I love listening to Audley and Steve Gorman, and there's some more I want to get into, but sometimes there's only so much time,
Hey, man, I suffer from the same thing sometimes. I hear someone saying, I had a guy the other day said something about, I've listened to every one of your shows, and I almost wanted to say, I'm really sorry. How do you listen to me for that much? I don't know, but I love you for it, and thank you. But
I appreciate you also just ask like real questions about life and experiences. It's not just like, and then this gig, and then what about that? It's like, because
thanks, man. Well, I appreciate you sharing the info, and everybody else who comes on the show. It's very kind.
There's nothing to hide or to, there's no, yeah.
Wait a minute, there might be something to hide. I have some questions about the Robinson brothers. we should probably hide that. Hey, man.
That's up to all of them to figure out. I had a great time playing with all those bands, and everyone has to make their way, and figure their thing out.
Yeah, man.
All I can say. We all do.
Absolutely,
we all have
man.
to just figure our thing out, and it's all okay. However you want to do, whatever you do,
Right on. Hey, let me wrap this up, and thank you for everything. I really appreciate it.
Oh, man. Back at you. Thank you.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels. Everybody, check out Andy Hess online. Go to andyhess.com. Thank you, Andy Hess, for coming on the show. I really appreciate everything, man. And again, if you're interested in lessons, or if you're interested in having Andy play some tracks on your bass, play some bass tracks on your songs, he's got a home studio and he's doing a lot of that right now. Go to his website, andyhess.com, and contact Andy. The tab is where you go. And most important, especially nowadays, man, remember that happiness really is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice. Go play your guitar or your bass and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Andy, thank you so much for everything, brother.